The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. This is episode 9 of a series I'm doing called Masterpieces of Science Fiction. I will leave a link to the announcement video down in the description if you haven't watched that already. And this is the first book I've read by John Wyndham, and he wrote this book in 1951. After I finished the book, I read the introduction by Edmund Morris, and he kind of describes or talks about how Wyndham is a little bit of more of a household name across the pond from us here in America. He really, I mean, I had probably heard of him a couple times. I think I'd heard of this story. It's probably his most popular. But he's a really good writer. I really enjoyed the book. I think he deserves maybe a little more credit over here in America for the post-apocalyptic genre, because I can't really think of many books that are this old that kind of capture what we think of now as a post-apocalyptic book. The setting, the characters, what they're struggling with is a big theme and a big part of this book. Now there's two elements that kind of carry the plot and the story of this book. The first of which is there's conspiracy theory kind of laden through all of the book. So there was these plants discovered, and they have this very valuable oil that people want to harvest from them. So there's a need to keep these plants around, but the plants have a couple caveats with them. For one, they're mobile. They can walk around fairly slowly, but they can still move. They can pick up their roots and walk around. They also have these poison sacs, and they can sting people, causing all kinds of ailments, including death. But it's worth it for their oil, apparently. So people have kind of devised these corrals or way to contain these plants so that they won't sneak off and murder people. Because they will murder people and eat them. The other thing that happens is there's like this meteor shower that takes place, and everyone's aware of it, and they all go out, and most everyone on the planet, as far as we can tell, goes out to look at this thing, and it creates blindness for anyone who happens to be looking at it. So when we start the book at the point of view of the main character, Bill, and he had been stung by a Triffid. That's what the plants are called, because he is a biologist and he's involved with Triffids and breeding and getting the oil or whatever there is to do with raising Triffids. So he had gotten stung and had gotten some temporary blindness, and they had bandages around his face, and he was in a hospital. And when he wakes up, basically he wakes up after the meteor shower, and he still has his sight. He goes out and sees everybody kind of stumbling around. And that's kind of what creates this apocalypse, this blindness. No one knows what to do. They're kind of aimlessly stumbling around, trying to figure out what's going on. And there are a few people who happen to not look up at the meteor shower, and they still have their sight. So at first, when I was reading about these Triffids and everything, I just kept thinking of the movie Little Shop of Horrors, and the way it was written, it is a little bit of an older style, and I just kept thinking that this was just this campy, comical, weird story about these plants that are going to run around and murder everyone. And it was almost comedic to me at a point. But then once we get into the book and our main character is kind of navigating around this post-apocalyptic world where there's the majority of the population just in this horrible state of blindness, not being able to provide for themselves, not being able to see what's going on, it quickly became very dark. And there are some very dark scenes in this book that make you really think. There's a lot of questions about ethics. These survivors that are left, what do they do? Do they help the blind people, or do they just try to take care of themselves? So that's the first thing that kind of threw me off balance, and I wasn't really expecting it to go that way. And he did a really good job writing that part of the book. I think there's so many post-apocalyptic books that I've read since then that probably have borrowed a lot of the setting and the tone and the theme of that disparity, and trying to figure out as a survivor, you know, what is the most important thing for you? Do we rebuild collectively? Do we just go take care of ourselves? You know, there's just a lot of different ideas that were really well thought out in this book, especially for a book, you know, 80 years old. I can't really think of any book pre-1950 that touches the post-apocalyptic setting so well. If anybody does have any suggestions, please recommend them to me. I think I've probably read more post-apocalyptic books than just about anything. I went on a kick for a while, you know, 10, 20 years ago, where I was reading almost nothing but that. Very fascinated by that idea. So the book kind of focuses on that aspect, and I'm not going to go too much more into the plot besides that because I don't want to spoil it. There was a twist at the end, another thing that kept me off balance. I kind of thought we were going one way, kind of went another way, but like I said, this book is kind of full of what we would consider conspiracy theories. Nothing is completely proven, nothing is completely resolved. There's some openness at the end that lets you interpret the events on your own, which I think is really good. I don't mind books that do that. I know some people really hate that, but I like being able to kind of write my own ideas into the book when I finish it. So overall, I really liked it. So the pros and cons, let's go over those. The writing style was really good. It doesn't read that dated. He even includes women in this book as, you know, members of society a little bit more than most writers were at this time, so that was kind of good. Just not being aware of where he was going with this book. I kind of went into this book blind, so that helped a lot, I think. I know there was maybe like a TV show or movie or something, so I really knew nothing about the book. I didn't even know a Triffid was a plant when I picked this book up. I didn't read the intro because, like I've warned people, these reprint books with modern intros and everything, they will almost always kind of spoil some aspect of the book for you. So I wait till the end and I go back and read it, see if I agree with them. The post-apocalyptic aspect of this book was probably the biggest pro for me. Just I wasn't expecting such a good world and, you know, sense of desolation, and kind of trying to figure out what you should do if an event happened like this. So that thought process was really good. There was also some really good dialogue between our main character and some of the other characters. There was kind of a love interest, and then there was this other character, I think his name was Coker, and the dialogue between our main character and Coker in some of the sections was just really good. They were trying to kind of figure out some big, broad questions and ideas in life, so that was pretty interesting. And then for some cons, you know, it was a short book, so I don't really expect a ton of world building and character development in a 200-page book like these. And, you know, you can only go so far with that. So there really isn't that many cons for me. I think for a book this old and this short, and what was packed into here, and the dialogue, the narrative, the ideas, it is all really good. I would definitely give this a 4 out of 5. It's pushing pretty close to maybe a 5 out of 5 for me, but probably just right before that is where it lands with me. And then I think in the intro, I think the guy Edmund, he mentions that especially over in the UK, this is a very highly recommended book for people wanting to get into sci-fi. And I agree. I think I don't hear that as much in America. You hear the Arthur C. Clarke's and the Isaac Asimovs and those kind of names brought up for trying to get someone into sci-fi, but I think this would be a very good book to get someone introduced into sci-fi and kind of a post-apocalyptic setting. And so I really feel like you could recommend this book to anybody. I've read quite a few books, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic. I'm really curious how this book never came across my plate before, and I'm glad that I'm doing this series and it landed on my radar, and I'm really glad I read it. So that's about it for that. I can now put it on my shelf. It's finished. And the next book I'm reading is the first actual Easton Press copy, and it's The Einstein Intersection by Samuel R. Delany. And so I've just started it. It's reading pretty quick. It's a short book. And so that'll probably be the next book that comes out on my channel as a book review. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.